They die.
The first word that popped in my head was wilting. They just fall over and die if they get sick. But that's about it.
They die, and they die in mass quantities.
I think they just die off, and I don't know.
This is probably what you picture when you think about plant sickness. People tend to believe that plants just die when they get sick. However, the process is more complicated than that. Plants have immune responses to disease, just like humans do. Currently, researchers are investigating the various immune responses that plants have, one being growth inhibition. Plants must reallocate energy from growth and use it for defense when they are trying to fend off disease. As a result, they don't grow quite as well. This response alone results in a huge portion of crop losses every single year, which means less food and higher food prices, two things nobody wants. Researchers in Dr. Scott Peck's lab at the University of Missouri are trying to find ways to better equip plants to defend themselves against disease and increase food security.
The growth inhibition that occurs is something that we know occurs as a phenomenon. So we can go out into the field and we can spray chemicals onto plants and induce resistance. So it sounds like we have a solution, but the problem is the plant ends up being very stunted, very small, and therefore produces very little food. So ultimately, part of the research is trying to understand what causes the plant to become restricted in growth, what causes it to be smaller, but we really don't know what it is that causes the actual inhibition of growth. And we don't know whether it's something that simply comes out of an immune response or if it's part of the immune response. We really don't understand how growth inhibition occurs, and part of that is because standard genetics ends up knocking out one gene at a time, and therefore one gene product is altered. But quite often in plants or in animals, multiple gene products have similar functions. So if you take one away, you can't see any change in the organism. So what we've been making use of are new tools that allow us to knock out large numbers of what we think might be related genes all at once. And therefore we can possibly find new components involved in this growth inhibition response. We often think about human health in terms of treating the disease, but I think there are very strong arguments that we should be putting a lot of our thought processes into preventing diseases. And a lot of that has to do with day-to-day health, eating good foods, eating healthy foods, and having enough of those available at a cost-effective means for most people to have access to these. I think the big issue is food security. We all get fairly complacent about being able to go down to the local grocery store and there's always an abundance of food that's present. But what we have to remember are there are also those circumstances like the Great Potato Famine back in the 1800s, where suddenly a new pathogen activity completely destroyed the crop. And so we need to be constantly gaining a better understanding to get new tools, new ways of trying to get resistance in the field to make sure in the end that we have a constant supply of food that shows up at the table.
Now, you know that plants don't always die when they get sick. However, plant disease is still a big problem. It's estimated that 15% of the global harvest is lost to disease every year. This equates to almost $220 billion wasted annually. Researchers in the Peck Lab are among many who are paving the way for healthier crops across the globe. Understanding the link between disease recognition and plant immunity is critical to helping farmers produce more food. And for you, this means more food options and lower food prices.